Your host today, Ben Hubbard. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio in this segment is DeWitt County Board Chair Joe Witte, following up the Thursday night board meeting. Joe, how are we doing this morning?
Good, Ben. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. 36 minutes. I don't know if that's a record or anything. Pretty short. I like it, especially when I'm the one who has to go, Joe.
Yeah.
You run a good meeting.
A record, but yeah, we didn't have a ton of things to take action on last night, so yeah, we made pretty quick progress through it.
Well, the big thing at the meeting last night was DeWitt County Emergency Management Agency Coordinator, Mr. William Pavlik, coming back to you guys with some more information on the sirens that are owned by Constellation Clean Energy. Let's just dive into a little bit of the timeline and the history of this project. This has been something that was visited all the way back in 2022. So let's start there, Joe.
Yeah. So I think that even predated my time on the board. I remember being at the board meeting where there was a motion at the time to take over those sirens that were going to be decommissioned by Constellation. I think they have a new system that they're going to have to move over to, for reasons I think related to.
I think it's FEMA.
Yeah, and it's requirements there. So the sirens are going to be decommissioned at some point in the future. It's Constellation owned equipment today. And I think they offered for the county or the different entities, not just the county, to the option to take those over. So yeah, back in 2022, that went before the board, and it was unanimously rejected. At that time, we didn't want to take on that expense. Some time has passed. Obviously, some members of the board have changed over, and I think I recall the public wasn't thrilled about the idea of losing the sirens. And so, we've also had, I think Will came to us in that time frame, and he's been working on, the new systems, the iPause alert system, some of the, the Everbridge is the system where you can opt into it. And so as that date approaches where those are going to be sunset, I know both Will and Annette in his office have been working on, getting ready for that next step. And so, I think they've been looking at our options. It was decided back in 2022 that we didn't want to take on all 40 sirens and the cost associated with that. But I think the current board wants to look at what our options are, because we do have some areas that aren't covered very well from a cell perspective. And so I want to make sure that, citizens are safe, and those that are visiting the county and the lake, that they have coverage in the event that we do have some type of event.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's also been some discussion, and like you said, at the time it was voted down because of cost concerns and some cost concerns around with the board members. But there's been some different numbers thrown around. And so what are those accurate numbers that were presented by Will last night as far as the costs per siren?
Well, when we say accurate, there's always going to be some unknowns.
Of course.
There's going to be averages over a period of time. And it depends on how many of these sirens you take on. There's going to be different age considerations. Some of the equipment might need to be replaced. If he looked at it, I think it was a 6-year average. They were having an average of 3.5 failures a year since 2022 on the sirens and equipment.
And this was for 40 sirens.
This is for 40 sirens.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to bring that motion back forward in a different way, where we could take action on it again, would we prioritize certain sirens, those that are in the underserved areas, where there's not good cell coverage? There's sirens that are actually outside of the county in McLean County. There's some that are in the municipalities. So, I think there's going to be continuing discussion from Will's office with those municipalities to see if they want to take some on. And I think from there, then maybe we'll have a better idea what the cost was going to be. But he did give us some averages for the 40 sirens. There's going to be obviously an ongoing maintenance. And then there's an average, if you have 3.5 failures per year for 40 sirens, what can you anticipate? And maybe sometime, since these are getting older, you might have more. So we've got some numbers now that we can kind of make some educated decisions on. But I think we're going to have to still look at, the specific sirens. Would we keep all of them? I don't know that we could bring that same motion back forward, but it's something that I think, when we have the lake to draw a lot of, folks to
Right.
DeWitt County, we want to make sure that, that if there's not great cell coverage out there, that if we have some bad weather rolling in, that, we have a way to alert the public.
Mhm.
And the same thing for the citizens, for areas where cell coverage is not great. You can't rely on those phone alerts through the iPod system and you got the weather radios that we're looking into. Is there a way to get some of those for the areas that are not covered very well? We want to make sure that you have a good way to notify the public and redundant systems in a backup.
Right.
And then the cost, I guess, is going to come down to, what are we thinking as far as, do we want to do a service contract? Do we want to take on that ourselves? And, if we were to take on 10 or so sirens, which is kind of where Will was, his mind was thinking that, there's 10 that we could take that would, make sure that we had some coverage in the areas that are underserved today. I think $14,000 to $15,000 a year is kind of the average.
Sure.
But that's over a larger number. As you get down to a smaller subset, and if they're older sirens, then that number could obviously spike. So we got to have some discussions in, probably starting in public safety, but then even as we're getting into the budget discussions, what would we want to allocate, and what are the other municipalities thinking?
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Joe, but Mr. Ferguson last night brought up an interesting point. He brought up concerns over the age of some of these sirens. Right. And then he brought up the idea of putting like cell antennas on top of these poles rather than keeping them up as sirens. And that could maybe improve the everyday connection in these underserviced areas. I'm kind of curious what your reaction to that was.
I think you always have to be looking at what technologies are out there that might be better. 30, 40 years ago when these were put in, we didn't imagine that we'd have, these little cell phones on our hip that would be able to alert us, anywhere at any time. So, technology is constantly changing. We still have areas that are underserved from a cellular perspective. I think, was it land use a few months ago? I think you were at that meeting where we had somebody come in and kind of present some information about the different towers and structures in the area where we could potentially, expand coverage or improve coverage elsewhere. So yes, I think that's got to be part of the discussion. Relying on sirens, I know it's uncomfortable to think that, something could go away that's going to alert us, and they have a great purpose, but maybe we've relied on those over the years when they weren't really designed to, wake you up from a sleep. That's what the other technology has come along to do. So, I think you got to look at it holistically. And I trust that Phil and Annette and their discussions with our constellation partners and others, they're trying to make sure that we have, not only systems that will work for the entire county, but systems that back those up. And I think cellular has got to be a part of that discussion. Yeah,
definitely. Well, there's still quite a bit of time, before a decision needs to be made on this. The decommissioning, I believe they said, was going to be the end of 2027-ish for that. Where does this fall on, the priority chart for the county?
So I don't think then that we have a ton of time.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, no, it sounds like it, right? Because it's 2027, 2028.
Yeah.
But we're going to be setting our budget and voting on that.
True.
In just a couple of months. I guess December is the end or beginning of the new fiscal year.
Good point.
So if these were to be decommissioned in late 2027 and we're wanting to take some out, we've got to have the money budgeted for that. So I think we've got to have some discussions at public safety. What is the recommendation if we can take something back forward to the board and take action? And then what is the cost going to be? Where's that money going to come from? Obviously, we want to make sure that we're keeping taxes as low as we possibly can. And so, at the same time, public safety, alerting, the public in the event of some type of severe weather where you don't have cell coverage and you don't have a weather radio or the iPOS system is not going to be reliable there. We got to make sure that there is coverage there as well. So I think those discussions certainly need to happen in the coming months. Whether or not we budget for that this coming fiscal year and then don't have to take them over right away. That I'd rather budget for it and have the money there than, have these sirens decommissioned and us not have the money to take on what we think is necessary. So I think those discussions will continue in the coming months, and we'll, whether or not we take action before the end of the current fiscal year or not, I guess to be determined. It kind of depends on how those discussions with the municipalities and other areas, how those progress as well.
Sure. Joe, is there anything that we missed on this conversation with these Constellation sirens that the county could possibly be taken over?
I don't think so. I think these discussions will continue. We know that we hear, from the public, we know that there is a concern, and I guess I would say I trust that Will and Annette are considering all options, making sure that where we do have some areas that aren't served well, they are looking to grant money to secure weather radios and things like that. So you got to keep in mind, I guess in the information that Will shared, these weather the sirens were never designed or intended to alert people indoors that there's weather coming. They are intended to alert you when you're outdoors to seek shelter, and then tune into your radio or your local stations to find out more information. And I think my understanding too is when the sirens go off today, it's for the entire county. So you don't have the targeted alerts that some of these other systems have. So it's something that we'll have more information coming out. No idea where we're going to end up, but we hear the public. We know there's concerns, and I know that Will and Annette are working hard to make sure that we have a good system going forward.
There you go. All right. So if you're looking for more information, come see Will and Annette and all the wonderful committee members of the Public Safety Committee. Joe. Let's take a quick break. More to come with Joe Witte, the DeWitt County Board Chair, on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW. Let's check the opening numbers now with the Chicago Board of Trade on this Friday. I'm Jim Taylor on the RFD Radio Network. Corn, beans, and Chicago wheat all starting the day lower. September corn opening $4.57, down 6 3/4. December corn down 6 3/4, $4.80 3/4, and March corn $4.96 1/2, down 6 3/4. August beans opening $12.35 1/2, down 2. September beans down 2 3/4. $12.28 1/4. November beans $12.41, down 2 3/4. September Chicago wheat $6.69 1/2, down 26 3/4. September KC wheat $7.31 1/2, down 28 1/4. August bean meal $3.30.70, up 80 cents. August bean oil $74.36, down $1.25. Energy market September Brent crude oil down $2.60, $98.09. RFD Radio Network.
This is Inside Out.
Chevrolet is the heartbeat of America, and now is the time to celebrate our nation's birthday in a new Chevrolet. This is Scott Baum from Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton and Farmer City, inviting you to come see our selection of Chevrolets, like the sporty Chevrolet Trax and the good-looking Trailblazer. We also have a good selection of Chevrolet Equinox and the full-size Traverse. Chevrolet, together let's drive. BaumChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
Here's Hart Media Group owner Matt Hart talking about being in front of our audience on multiple platforms.
This what we call the second screen, right? It's the phone, because now we don't watch television one screen at a time. We're constantly watching two screens. You might be watching the University of Illinois football game on Saturday on your big screen, but you got your phone there. And when a commercial comes on or a timeout comes on, you're watching that second screen. And we want to make sure that we're positioned to be on the second screen, whether it's social media, we want to be there.
Hart purchased the Miller Media Group in Clinton in August of 2025.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
It's the WHOW Morning Show. I'm your host today, Ben Hubbard. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. We continue with my guest in studio in this segment, Mr. Joe Witte, the DeWitt County Board Chair. And Joe, in the news as of late with DeWitt County over the last year or so has been this IT ad hoc committee and just developing the different policies and IT aspects of the county. Give us a reminder of how this started and where we're at now.
I think it started when the current board was seated almost a year and a half ago. We set up as a 1-year ad hoc committee. And then at the conclusion of that first year, which would have been November, we extended it for 1 more year. So the committee will remain in place until November of this year. And we charge them with looking at, compliance, our ordinances up to date. And then an IT perspective, looking at, our IT infrastructure, the software using the website, things like that. And one of the things that came out of that was a recommendation to hire an internal IT
guy,
technician, Ethan. Ethan, I want to say Offenbach is the last name. He's coming up on 6 months.
Great.
Hear great things. He's done a lot to move some of these things forward that we've been discussing. And that's one of the things that Mr. Ryan brought forward last night was, awareness that we're looking at our internet policies, our security IT policies in the case we were to have some kind of cyber event, that we have a plan in place. And now that we've got Ethan in-house, we've got somebody to kind of help drive some of that. So the committee had been busy. I think for the first part of this year, we were looking at our more the compliance side of things.
Sure.
What is our ordinance? What types of updates do we need for our employee manual, for lack of a better word? Our procedures. And in recent months, we've shifted gears and kind of been looking at things from an IT perspective. Do we have a plan in place that we could just, in the event of some type of a cyber event or malware, that we would be able to pull, the team together as needed to manage that threat? And so, we're coming up on, November is just a few months away. There was also some discussion is what are we going to do long term for IT and compliance? Do we disband at the end of this 2 years, or is there really more of a need? And now that we've got an internal employee, we've kind of come to the conclusion that there's probably a need for a long-standing committee. So that may be something that we take action on. I was thinking of the timing. If we got a new board seated in December, it'd be nice to have that IT compliance committee established as a permanent committee, so that when the new board is seated in December, they can just pick right up where we left off and get that board populated and get that committee populated, and have that scope of what they're handling kind of clarified. So
very good.
Some more discussions probably in the coming months here, but we've got a little shift from the whole personnel policy to IT in the recent months, and hopefully we can wrap some of these up before the current board is concluded and we move on to a permanent committee.
Yeah. Are there any ways that you've noticed so far, just with Ethan just being around and, with the new policies and things that they're creating in like the day-to-day operations of the county? Have you seen those improvements, especially with that IT side?
So I'm not in the county building on a daily basis, and I don't see it firsthand, but the feedback that I've gotten is he's very appreciated, doing a great job. He's taking ownership, and he's saving the county money too, with some of the things that he's identified, and again, there's things that I think we identified that are gaps, not having some kind of cyber event plan that you can pick up and, and go through the steps and make sure that we get, the threat isolated and the right folks engaged. Driving that forward, we've got somebody now who's going to kind of help make sure that we don't have to wait from one meeting to the next, 1 month after month. but the feedback has been great, and I think we made the right decision in bringing in an IT technician for the county to be full time. I think he's being put to use and doing a great job. So
great. Joe, just a couple minutes here, but I'm going to switch gears because something just popped into my head. I didn't get to make it to the land use meeting this month. However, Mr. Buck Carter did mention last night that there was a lapse in payment for quite a time with a fee for the EPA. Is that correct?
yes,
Maybe just tell us a little bit more about what that was.
Wasn't a fee. It was, I got a letter that, just came out of nowhere, a letter from the EPA saying that we were not compliant. There is a solid waste management plan that was a multi-county effort back in, I want to say 2006 is when it was last updated. Some of our surrounding counties, we partnered with them. There was some state funding at the time to come up with this plan. And then per statute, every 5 years, we're supposed to supply an update. Well, the state funding disappeared, and I think it dropped off everybody's radar. And I found that many of the same counties also received this letter saying that we are delinquent in our 5-year update to that plan.
Gotcha.
So, I brought that forward to land use. What we're looking at doing is, we have to supply that update or else we could be subject to fines from the EPA. We need to look at finding an engineering firm that maybe assisted with that original plan back in 2006. I say the latest updated plan in 2006, and see what are the costs for doing an update. If it's cost prohibitive, something that we didn't budget for, we can request an extension from the EPA.
Gotcha.
Or maybe partner with some of the communities that were involved in the last update. But yeah, it's one of those things that came out of nowhere for me. I wasn't aware of the plan. I tried to find the plan online, and it's not out there. So
I'm sorry, I got to cut you off there, Joe, but sounds like the wheels are turning on that. Should be a resolution hopefully soon. Again, that is Joe Witte, the DeWitt County Board Chair on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.
The Big 1520, WHOW Clinton, along with 92.3 FM Clinton and 106.5 FM Bloomington Normal.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. Amit Thomason. The NYPD